Ethan stepped carefully over the jagged ice rocks, his boots crunching in the cold silence of the frozen canyon. The planet, far from human space, was unforgiving. Winds whipped across the icy cliffs and snow fell in thick layers, making the narrow paths almost invisible. His ship had been damaged in a supply run, leaving him stranded with only a small pack of rations and his survival gear. He knew he had to find shelter soon. The freezing temperatures could freeze him within hours. As he scanned the canyon walls, a faint sound reached him. It was soft, almost like a whisper carried by the wind, but it had a sense of urgency. He stopped, listening carefully. The sound was not the wind. It was a cry, a weak, distressed cry for help. Ethan's heart quickened. He had trained for emergencies on many worlds, but the feeling of finding someone in danger always hit him differently. Following the sound, he moved slowly, careful not to slip on the thin ice. The cries became louder, sharper. Around a bend, he found her. A small figure was trapped under fallen debris from a recent avalanche. Her skin had a pale, almost translucent blue hue, and her large dark eyes reflected fear and pain. She struggled weakly, calling out in a language he did not understand. Ethan didn't hesitate. He dropped his pack and began lifting the ice and debris, his fingers numbing from the cold. "It's okay, I'm here to help," he said, hoping she could understand him. He worked with all his strength, moving slabs of ice and broken rock. The girl gasped as he freed her arm first, then carefully helped her pull out the rest of her body. She fell to the ground, shivering violently. Hey, it's fine. You're safe now," Ethan said, wrapping his jacket around her thin frame. She looked up at him, wide-eyed and scared. Her breath came in quick, shallow bursts, and she clutched her arm where a deep gash ran across her forearm. Ethan winced. It was deep but not life-threatening. "I'll help you," he said. Pulling out his medkit, he cleaned the wound with antiseptic and wrapped it tightly. The girl watched him quietly, her eyes full of caution. She spoke again in her language, and he activated his small universal translator. Lyra, it translated. The name was simple but carried a musical tone that made Ethan smile slightly. "You're safe now, Lyra. My name is Ethan," he said. She repeated it hesitantly, testing the sounds of human speech. The night was falling fast. Ethan knew he needed to find a safer place for them to stay. He scanned the canyon and spotted a natural cave partially protected by overhanging rocks. He helped Lyra to her feet, and together they hobbled toward it. The cold bit at their skin, and Ethan could see her teeth chattering. He took off his gloves and held her hands for warmth, careful not to hurt her injured arm. Inside the cave, he set up a small fire using his survival kit. The warmth filled the cramped space, pushing back the biting cold outside. Lyra sat close to the fire, hugging herself. She watched Ethan with curiosity, occasionally speaking to the translator. "Home?" it said. Ethan shook his head. "Not yet, but I will help you get there." Lyra's species was small and delicate, but Ethan quickly realized that she was far more resilient than she appeared. She studied his every move, learning quickly, observing how he worked with tools and fire. Despite the fear in her eyes, there was a spark of intelligence and adaptability. As the night deepened, Ethan shared a small portion of his rations with her. Lyra ate hesitantly at first, then greedily, clearly exhausted from her ordeal. He learned that she had been separated from her tribe during a hunting expedition when an avalanche struck. She was the only one who had survived. The thought of an entire group of people lost in such a place made Ethan's stomach twist. But he focused on what he could do. Protect this one life. Lyra tried to communicate her gratitude, using gestures and simple sounds. Ethan nodded and smiled. "I understand. You're safe. That's what matters." Her eyes softened, and for the first time he saw a glimmer of trust. The night was long and quiet, punctuated by the howl of the wind outside. Ethan and Lyra huddled close to the fire, both aware of the dangers beyond the cave. Large predatory creatures roamed the planet, adapted to the cold and capable of incredible speed. Ethan had encountered a few while scouting earlier in the day. The fire would keep them away for now, but he knew it wouldn't last forever. Over the next hours, he repaired some of the minor damage to his survival gear, keeping one eye on Lyra. She had started mimicking his actions, gathering small pieces of wood and trying to help. It was awkward, but he encouraged her. "Good, keep trying," he said, and she nodded, a small smile breaking through her anxious expression. By dawn, the storm had calmed slightly, and the canyon was bathed in a pale, cold light. Ethan knew they couldn't stay in the cave forever. He had to find a safer location and, if possible, locate Lyra's tribe. He gathered his supplies, checking his limited map and recalling the stories of local alien settlements he had heard from traders. There were few in this region, but if they could survive the terrain, it might be the only way to ensure Lyra's safety. Lyra followed him silently, stepping carefully in the snow. Ethan noticed how she watched the tracks in the ice, learning from his movements, and how she occasionally pointed to a distant ridge, as if to suggest a path. Her survival instincts were sharp, and he began to respect her even more. The journey was slow and exhausting. The cold bit at their fingers and faces, and the winds carried snow that stung like needles. Ethan had to stop frequently, helping Lyra over rough patches and keeping the fire in his portable heater alive. Despite the struggle, there was a quiet bond forming between them, a connection born of trust, courage, and mutual reliance. One afternoon they came across a frozen river, cracked in places but passable. Ethan tested the ice with a long pole, ensuring it could hold their weight. Lyra watched him carefully, then stepped onto the ice, moving with surprising agility. Halfway across, a loud crack echoed, and a section of ice broke beneath her feet. Without thinking, Ethan lunged, catching her just in time. "You're safe," he shouted, pulling her back to solid ground. She gasped, her eyes wide with fear and relief. She reached out and held his hand, a silent thank you that spoke more than words ever could. Ethan realized that saving her life had become more than an act of duty. It had become a responsibility he could not abandon. As the day faded, they reached the base of a ridge that promised some shelter. Ethan scouted the area, finding a small, semi-protected hollow that could serve as a temporary camp. He built another small fire and helped Lyra settle down. She leaned against a rock, her eyes closing briefly. He knew sleep was essential if they were to survive the next stage of their journey. While she slept, Ethan reflected on what had happened. He had saved her from death, but now he carried a heavier burden. This girl was not just a life to protect. She represented a bridge between human and alien worlds. If her tribe learned of her survival, he knew they would come for her. He only hoped they would see his actions as honorable, not threatening. Night fell again, deeper and colder than before. Ethan stayed awake, keeping watch while Lyra slept, listening to the wind and the distant sounds of the frozen planet. Every noise made him tense, but he knew he had to remain vigilant. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "You're safe now. I won't let anything happen to you." Lyra stirred, half awake, and looked at him with trust in her eyes. It was a small gesture, but it filled Ethan with a sense of purpose. He wasn't just surviving for himself anymore. He was surviving for her, for the bond they had formed in the harshest of conditions. As the fire flickered and the cold night pressed against their temporary refuge, Ethan realized that the journey was only beginning. Saving Lyra was just the first step. What awaited them could be danger, friendship, or something he could not yet imagine. But one thing was clear. He would face it, and he would not fail. The bond between the human and the alien girl had been forged in snow, ice, and peril. And soon the consequences of that bond would reach far beyond the frozen canyon, changing both their lives forever. The next morning the wind had calmed, leaving a bright, icy silence over the canyon. Ethan and Lyra packed up their temporary camp, ready to continue toward higher ground where he hoped to spot signs of her tribe. Ethan had noticed tracks in the snow earlier, small, deliberate footprints that suggested a group was nearby. He kept his senses sharp, knowing that Lyra's people were highly cautious and protective of their own. As they moved through the snow, Lyra occasionally pointed to the horizon, gesturing with urgency. Ethan followed her gaze and noticed a faint shimmer in the distance, a moving cluster of figures. At first he thought it might be wildlife, but the shapes became clearer as they approached. They were humanoid but taller than Lyra, and their skin carried the same pale blue tone, glistening faintly in the morning light. Ethan instinctively slowed, keeping behind a ridge, letting Lyra step forward. She looked back at him, nodding slightly. The figures approached carefully, stopping a few meters away. Ethan could see now that they were all women, each with the same cautious yet strong demeanor. Their eyes studied him intensely, scanning every movement. One stepped forward, taller than the others, with a commanding presence. Ethan raised his hands in a universal gesture of peace. "I mean no harm. I saved Lyra. "I only want to help her," he said, his voice calm but firm. The translator caught his words, but the lead woman remained still, assessing him. Lyra stepped forward, her small hand reaching toward Ethan. The gesture seemed to ease the tension, and the tribe relaxed slightly, though their eyes never left him. The leader finally spoke. The translator worked slowly this time. "You claim to protect our child. Proof is needed. We will watch." The words carried weight. Ethan nodded. "I understand. I will show you." The women spread out, circling him and Lyra. They were testing him, watching for weakness or deceit. Ethan realized that this was not just about Lyra's safety. It was about honor. Her tribe respected courage, intelligence, and moral strength. This was their way of determining if he could be trusted. The first test came quickly. A narrow path led down to a frozen ravine. Ethan had to cross it first, making sure it could hold their weight. The ice creaked under his boots, threatening to give way. The women watched silently, their eyes sharp, evaluating every careful step. Ethan moved deliberately, showing control and confidence. When he reached the other side safely, Lyra followed, and finally the tribe moved across, impressed by his judgment and steady hands. The second test was more direct. One of the women, younger and agile, approached and held out a small device that emitted a low, pulsating light. Ethan had never seen anything like it. The translator rendered her words. "Do you understand the dangers of our land? Can you protect even when threats are hidden?" Ethan studied the device. It was a trap, a simulation of a dangerous predator designed to test alertness and problem-solving. He noticed subtle cues in its movement, slight vibrations and patterns in the pulse. Using logic and observation, he carefully disarmed the device without touching it recklessly. The women murmured among themselves, a sound that seemed almost musical. The leader stepped forward, nodding slightly. "You understand caution. You are worthy of trust," she said. The translator repeated her words. Ethan breathed a small sigh of relief. Lyra's hand squeezed his, her eyes shining with pride and relief. The human had passed the initial tests, but Ethan knew that winning complete trust would take more than skill. It required respect and integrity. Over the next hours, Ethan and the tribe traveled together. Lyra's people moved with grace and efficiency, navigating the icy landscape like it was second nature. Ethan observed and learned quickly, picking up their signals, gestures, and methods for detecting threats. He shared what he knew about human survival, showing them his ways of building temporary shelters, using portable heaters, and rationing supplies efficiently. Slowly, a mutual respect grew. One evening, they camped near a cliffside overlooking a frozen valley. The tribe's leader approached Ethan alone. "You saved Lyra without thought of reward. You did not hesitate even when danger surrounded you. Humans are not known to our people. You carry courage beyond your kind." The translator rendered her words. Ethan nodded. "I did what anyone should do. She was in danger. That is enough for me." The leader studied him for a long moment, her eyes searching for hidden motives. Finally, she smiled faintly. "Then perhaps you are more than we expected." Ethan realized that her words were a recognition, not just of his actions but of his character. In that moment, he felt a sense of belonging, not to the tribe yet, but to the idea of shared honor and trust between human and alien. The next day, Lyra's tribe decided to lead Ethan and Lyra to their settlement. The journey was perilous, passing through jagged ice cliffs and crevices. Ethan had to rely on both his human ingenuity and the tribe's knowledge to avoid natural hazards. At one point, a sudden snowslide threatened to block their path. Ethan quickly devised a system of ropes and pulleys using his pack and natural materials around them. The tribe watched in awe as he maneuvered the unstable snow, ensuring that everyone crossed safely. By nightfall, they reached a plateau where the settlement was visible in the distance. It was a cluster of structures built from ice and stone, glowing softly with bioluminescent lights. The architecture was elegant, blending seamlessly into the frozen landscape. Ethan marveled at it, realizing the intelligence and culture of Lyra's people extended far beyond survival. They had built beauty in a harsh world. The tribe welcomed them with ceremony. Ethan followed quietly, not fully understanding all the customs but showing respect through his demeanor. Lyra ran ahead to her family, hugging them and chattering rapidly. The translator struggled to keep up, but Ethan understood enough to see that they were praising him, thanking him for saving her. The leader approached again, addressing the tribe. "This human has shown courage, wisdom, and respect. He is not like other humans our scouts have known. He is worthy of our trust." Ethan's heart lifted. He had not expected this level of acceptance, yet he felt the weight of responsibility. Being trusted by this tribe meant that he was now part of something larger than himself. Over the next days, Ethan learned more about the tribe. They shared knowledge of the land, their survival techniques, and even basic elements of their language. Lyra, now healthy and full of energy, became his guide, teaching him nuances of communication and culture. The human's quick learning impressed the women, who began including him in tasks that required strategy, such as planning supply routes and defending against predators. One afternoon, a minor predator attacked the outskirts of the settlement. Ethan observed the tribe's defensive formation and immediately adapted, using human tactics to assist them. He guided them into a safer position, used fire strategically, and helped coordinate their response. The predator was driven off without serious harm, and the tribe hailed Ethan's quick thinking. Lyra's hand found his again, her eyes shining with admiration. As days passed, Ethan's reputation among the tribe grew. They recognized his bravery and intelligence, qualities that they valued above physical strength. In their eyes, humans might be weaker in body, but Ethan had proven that the human spirit was formidable. One evening, around the glowing fire of their settlement, the tribe's leader approached Ethan once more. "You risked your life for Lyra, and for this you have earned more than our gratitude. You are now our guest, and our bond begins here." The translator conveyed her words. Ethan nodded solemnly. He understood the honor he had received. Lyra sat beside him, her small hand holding his. "Thank you," she said softly in human words. "For everything." Ethan smiled, squeezing her hand. "No need to thank me. You're family now." The night passed quietly, with the soft glow of the settlement lights reflecting on the ice. Ethan realized that his simple act of saving a life had rippled into something far greater. He had bridged the gap between human and alien, forming trust and friendship where there had been fear and uncertainty. In the following days, Ethan began helping the tribe with various tasks, from scouting dangerous areas to teaching new techniques for gathering resources efficiently. He also learned about their history, their traditions, and the challenges they faced in surviving on a harsh, frozen world. He found inspiration in their resilience and adaptability. Lyra grew closer to him every day, her admiration turning into deep trust. The bond between human and alien had become unbreakable. She introduced him to the young and old of the tribe, who all came to respect Ethan for his courage and intelligence. They saw in him not just a savior, but an equal, a human who could meet challenges with creativity, honor, and heart. Ethan understood that this was the essence of being human, the ability to rise above fear, to act with compassion, and to prove that courage could bridge worlds. In saving Lyra, he had discovered not just friendship, but a connection that spanned species, cultures, and expectations. The tribe had come to judge him, but in the end, they had been won over by his actions, his character, and his unwavering determination. Ethan knew that more challenges would come, but he also knew that together with Lyra and her people, they could face anything. The frozen planet, once hostile and isolating, had become a place of opportunity, trust, and adventure. Ethan had not only saved a life, he had found a place